So you want to buy a home here in Central Kentucky. You chose your realtor, you got pre-approved, you found the house you wanted, you submitted an offer, it got accepted. Now what? I'm Jeremy James with Lifestyle Real Estate. Welcome to our series on buying a home here in Central Kentucky. So your offer is accepted. Congratulations. You bought a house. Not quite. Not just yet. We have a contract on the house, but now we have a lot of stuff to take that goes in before we actually close. So what to expect after your offer's been accepted? Well, if you've negotiated inspections, then that's the first thing we're going to talk about, is setting up a home inspector to go in and take a look at the property and setting up all those inspections that you want or don't want. We're going to set those up and schedule those with the listing agent so that those inspectors can go in and then give you an inspection report and tell you what they find. For me, this is critical. Seriously, get a home inspection. I recommend a home inspection every single purchase. Simply because if you spend $400 to $450-ish, whatever that looks like, on a $200,000 home, but that home inspector comes back and there is a litany of problems within that home, whether it's foundation issues, whether it's mold, whether it's whatever that looks like, and these things all have happened and I've seen them all, then you need to know that going in. I would rather throw away $450 on a home inspection for a house that wasn't going to work for me than end up buying a $250,000 house that has a lot of problems that aren't simply going to go away over time. I encourage every one of my clients who are buying residential property, get the home inspection. So as we set up the home inspection, there are a couple other inspections that are typical. Pest inspections are some. Others want their chimney inspected. Others want their septic systems inspected if you're out in county and so forth. We'll set all those up. I try to get them all in on the same date. That's not always possible, but we try to make sure that that is done as quickly as possible. So when choosing your inspectors, one thing to keep in mind, they've got to be licensed. They've either got to be licensed home inspectors, licensed contractors in the area that they're inspecting, or whatever else. Your cousin coming in, taking a look and saying stuff's busted or foundations are ruined or whatever, unless they're licensed foundation specialists, then it really doesn't matter. We can't take that assessment and that opinion and take it to the seller and have them take us seriously. Now, keep in mind that when we look at all the things that are on the home inspection, we can only ask for things to be repaired that show up on that home inspection that are not already disclosed on the seller's disclosure. That's one of those pieces of paper that we get up front and we review and we look at what those things look like and what they're telling us is wrong with the house. So if they tell us that the foundation is cracked on the back wall and the home inspector comes up and it says that the foundation is cracked on the back wall, they've disclosed that. There's nothing we can do there. Keep in mind that when we submit our repair request after we get and review all those inspection reports, this is a negotiation. It's the second negotiation in the home purchasing process. We submit a list of things that we would like to be repaired or at least compensated for, but the seller doesn't necessarily have to do them. They can acknowledge everything that's on there, whatever, but they don't have to repair it if they don't want to. In strong sellers markets, I've seen where they reject literally the whole list and say, nope, we're not doing any of it. And basically you're forcing to take it as is. And then you have a choice to make about whether or not you're willing to accept those things or whether you're willing to terminate the contract and move on to something else. Other than inspections, the next thing we're going to be looking at is the appraisal. If you're getting a mortgage, most of the times you're going to have an appraisal for value on the property. And especially if you're getting a USDA, VA, or FHA loan, which is a government-backed loan, they're going to have certain requirements that have to be met in order for them to lend on that house, and that's going to be a part of that appraisal process. If you're paying cash and you've negotiated in that you want an appraisal, then we're going to hire an appraiser to come in and give us the appraised amount for that property. And then that's going to come back, and we'll have to decide whether or not that's going to work. A mortgage company is only going to lend up to the max number of that appraisal. So if you paid or you offered $275,000, but the appraisal comes back in at $250,000, then we're a $25,000 gap, and you need to decide: are you going to pay that $25,000 out of pocket? Some do. I've seen it. Or are you going to hold them to that max appraisal price, and we'll try to renegotiate at $250,000? So those are some of the discussions that we have to have based on the appraisal. Then we'll tasked the attorney with the title search so they can make sure that all the liens and everything are found and will be removed from the house before we close. Make sure it's nice and clean. You get a nice, clean deed at the end of it all. During this time period, if you're getting a mortgage, then you're probably going to be asked for a lot of documents from your loan officer. You're going to be asked for proof of employment if that's necessary. You're going to be asked for all sorts of different things, tax records, everything else, pay stubs, bank statements, all kinds of stuff. Stuff that would absolutely seem ridiculous. They're going to be looking at and wanting explanations for different deposits, if they're large deposits or whatever else, and where this money came from. All of it has to be sourced. It's absolutely crazy. Lenders hate cash. If you sleep with a $20,000 in a coffee can under your bed, then we need to talk about that before we ever even get started, because if you go throwing that in your bank and you're going to get a loan, then that's going to raise a red flag, and we've got to source that money and figure out where it came from and everything else. Trust me, it can be a pain. So any of that kind of stuff we need to talk about and discuss with your loan officer. If the loan officer tells you they need a bank statement, they mean the entire statement, page 1 through 6, whatever that looks like, all of it, clear, not redacted. Don't go blacking stuff out, because that's just going to bring more questions back. So they're going to ask you for a lot of stuff. And then once it gets to this dark nether world called underwriting, which in 8 years of doing this, I've never met an underwriter. I don't know if they actually exist or whatever. But once your loan paperwork goes to underwriting, those underwriters are going to ask a lot of questions. And they're going to ask for more documentation. And you're going to be like, but I submitted that already. And they're going to say, I know, but you got to submit it again. It can be a bit of a pain. So in those last couple weeks, after we have finished all those inspections and everything else, there's going to be a lot of discussion between you and your mortgage loan officer getting all this documentation. A few years ago, back prior to 2008, it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, lenders are protecting themselves, especially if we're dealing with FHA, USA, or USDA, or VA loans. There's just a lot more documentation that's needed. Get ready for that. Be prepared for that, because as we get through this process and you're complaining to me, you're complaining to the loan officer and everything else about the amount of documents they need, I'm going to remind you of this video, and you can go back and remember where I said that this can be a painful process. But if you listen to your loan officer and listen and respond quickly, the faster and more painless this process can be for you, okay? Take a deep breath. Let it out. We can get through it, and we will get through it. Once we get all those documents back and we get those everything reviewed and approved by underwriting, then we get those 3 little magic words that every single home buyer wants to hear: clear to close. After that, we figure out what comes next. I'm Jeremy James with Lifestyle Real Estate, and this is our multi-part series on home buying here in Central Kentucky.